Nicole Anderson stepped into the marble-lined private client lounge, the soft click of her sneakers against the polished floor barely audible, yet every eye subtly shifted toward her as Edward Collins, the branch manager, leaned over the counter with a dismissive smirk and said, "This lounge isn't for people like you." His words slicing through the quiet like a lightning bolt. Nicole paused just outside the glass partition, her fingers lightly clutching a sleek black tablet case, her expression calm, unreadable, yet carrying a gravity that seemed to settle the room. She took a measured breath and moved forward, passing the polished desks and rows of clients seated with subtle curiosity, her presence quiet but commanding, as if the air itself adjusted to her weight. And before Edward could add another word, she spoke evenly, almost under her breath. "I have a withdrawal to complete." And the sound of her voice seemed to echo, drawing attention from the murmuring customers and the few tellers who exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to proceed. Edward's eyes narrowed, a flash of impatience and disbelief crossing his face, and he leaned closer, tapping the countertop with a rigid finger. "You're not verified. We'll need proof of funds and identification," he said, his tone sharp, practiced, as though this was routine, though his eyes betrayed something else, a flicker of uncertainty. Nicole didn't flinch, merely set the tablet down, opening it to display a neatly organized document, her movements precise, unhurried, as though every gesture was calculated to communicate calm authority, and the room seemed to inhale along with her, the tension thickening but suspended, caught in the rhythm of her presence. Behind Edward, a junior banker shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the document, while a nearby client subtly raised a phone, fingers hovering over the record button, curiosity sparking as Nicole's gaze swept the room, not confrontational, but piercing, commanding attention without raising her voice. And the murmurs began to ripple, a quiet wave of awareness spreading, as each word and glance from Nicole seemed to weigh heavier than the earlier insult. Edward straightened, attempting to reclaim control, his voice rising slightly. "Sir, or ma'am, you need to step aside until verification is complete." But Nicole met his tone with the same measured calm, her eyes unblinking, steady, as if challenging him to see past the superficial and recognize the gravity she carried without a single flourish. A soft click resonated as her assistant's message appeared on her phone, confirming that protocols were active, the verification process ready, and Nicole's lips curved in a subtle, knowing line, the hint of a storm gathering silently in her composed stance. And the room seemed to hold its breath, caught in that suspended moment where authority and doubt collided, leaving every person present aware that something far larger than a simple transaction was unfolding. That power had quietly entered the room, and the next few minutes would reveal it to all. Yet the resolution, the revelation of identity, and the shift in control had not yet arrived, leaving the viewers perched on the edge, waiting for the moment Nicole would turn this quiet tension into undeniable command. Nicole remained seated, her posture calm and deliberate, the quiet hum of the air conditioning filling the brief pauses between murmurs from the few clients who had begun to whisper among themselves. Edward Collins straightened his shoulders, attempting to assert control, his eyes scanning the lounge for support from his staff, yet each glance met with subtle hesitation and uncertainty, as though even they could feel the weight of Nicole's presence. She opened her tablet with slow, precise movements, the screen illuminating documents that confirmed her authority and the legitimacy of her request, while Edward's attempts to interrupt were met with her steady gaze, unflinching, signaling that she would not be moved by bluster or intimidation. A junior banker, unsure where to place her loyalties, discreetly raised her phone, capturing the interaction, while a nearby client whispered to another, "This does not seem right," the words spreading like sparks through the lounge, adding a layer of quiet tension to the atmosphere. Nicole's breathing was measured, each inhale and exhale controlled, as she allowed Edward to continue, his tone rising slightly, a mix of frustration and disbelief, demanding additional verification, questioning the sequence of events. Yet her eyes remained locked on his, communicating a patience forged through years of facing similar doubts and underestimations, a silent strength that seemed to anchor the room itself. The clients leaned slightly forward in their seats, drawn by the interplay of authority and challenge, the energy in the lounge building slowly, a taut wire stretching between assertion and recognition. Nicole's assistant's message buzzed softly in her ear, confirming that all necessary protocols were active and that the verification process was ready to support her, yet she did not immediately act, letting the tension build naturally. Each subtle movement, each pause measured for maximum effect, ensuring that when the revelation came, it would land with undeniable clarity. Edward motioned for security to approach, attempting to regain control, his gestures authoritative. Yet Nicole's quiet command and the composed presence of clients who now watched attentively began to shift the balance subtly, the room leaning into her restraint rather than his overt insistence. A young teller shifted uneasily behind the counter, noticing the calm, unshakable confidence with which Nicole maintained her position, and began to question the validity of their own assumptions, while another client, previously engrossed in a smartphone, now looked up, recording silently, capturing the unfolding scenario for others to witness. Nicole's eyes briefly scanned the entire lounge, taking in the expressions of doubt, curiosity, and growing respect, each one a reflection of the invisible tension she had been cultivating, as though the air itself were holding a collective breath, waiting for the final act that would define the outcome. With one smooth movement, she lifted her head, her voice soft but clear, delivering instructions to her assistant to activate the verification sequence. A calm precision that suggested inevitability rather than threat, and the subtle click of digital confirmation echoed through her tablet, signaling that the authority she carried was no longer abstract but immediately actionable. A quiet wave of power rippling outward. The lounge remained still, the clients leaning in, the staff caught between protocol and instinct, all eyes on Nicole, sensing that a pivotal moment was approaching, a moment where silence and composure held more influence than any raised voice. And as the verification process began to display her credentials and authority on the screen, the room collectively recognized that the events about to unfold would not only resolve the immediate dispute, but redefine the understanding of presence, respect, and power in that space. Nicole Anderson's assistant confirmed that the verification protocol was fully active, and as the display on Nicole's tablet updated, the lounge began to absorb the weight of undeniable proof. Edward Collins shifted uneasily, his earlier confidence wavering, glancing toward his staff, who now hesitated, caught between protocol and instinct, uncertain of how to respond as the names and credentials clearly validated Nicole's authority, showing her as the CEO of Collins Group and primary account holder of the transactions she had requested. The clients who had quietly watched the exchange now leaned forward, some raising their phones to capture the unfolding scene, others exchanging murmurs that carried a growing sense of recognition and astonishment, the room charged with attention that no one could ignore. Nicole remained seated, composed, her gaze sweeping the entire lounge, taking in the subtle gestures of acknowledgment, the hesitation in Edward's stance, and the slight shifts among the bank staff, each movement reinforcing the quiet, mounting influence she held without raising her voice. A young teller at the far end of the counter exchanged a glance with a colleague, both registering a dawning awareness that the balance of authority had subtly but irreversibly shifted, that the assumptions which had guided their earlier actions were being recalibrated by the calm, unshakable presence before them. Nicole's hands rested lightly on the tablet as the verification completed, the digital confirmation cascading across the screen in clear, indisputable detail, and with a slight, almost imperceptible lift of her head, she allowed the lounge to fully register the scope of her position, the quiet gravity of her standing in contrast to Edward's previous assertions of control. Murmurs rose, gentle at first, then strengthening as clients recognized the reality of the situation, their attention fully drawn to Nicole, whose composed demeanor acted as a magnet, focusing the room on the integrity of her authority rather than the earlier tension. Edward opened his mouth to speak, a flurry of words attempting to reclaim some sense of order, yet the calm, deliberate eye contact from Nicole held him at bay, each blink and subtle shift communicating a power that needed no embellishment, and as the staff observed, their prior certainty began to erode. replaced with a cautious attentiveness that had not been present moments before. Nicole's gaze swept past the front desk to the edges of the lounge, noticing the subtle signs of human awareness. An older client adjusting her position to observe better, a young man pausing mid-gesture with a phone, realizing the significance of what was happening, and a junior banker standing frozen, realizing that the situation had escalated beyond routine protocol into a clear demonstration of authority and respect. She allowed a quiet, deliberate pause, the effect almost cinematic, the collective realization. In the room crystallizing as Edward's shoulders dropped slightly, his earlier bluster, now tempered by the evidence of her status and the composed certainty she radiated. And in that silence, Nicole's presence alone conveyed the inevitability of what was coming next, hinting at a resolution that would transform the interactions in the lounge, leaving every individual aware that the quiet assertion of true authority had shifted the energy irreversibly, and that the final acknowledgment of her power was only moments away. Nicole Anderson rose from her seat with deliberate calm, the subtle click of her tablet signaling the activation of the verification protocol, and the lounge seemed to hold its collective breath as every eye followed her measured steps across the polished marble floor. Edward Collins attempted to interject, his tone growing sharper, yet Nicole's gaze met his with an unyielding clarity that silenced further protest. The quiet authority she projected filling the space more powerfully than any raised voice could. The clients who had been whispering moments before now leaned forward, some capturing the scene with their phones, while others simply observed, captivated by the unfolding demonstration of control and composure, sensing that they were witnessing a shift that went far beyond routine banking procedure. Nicole's assistant confirmed the protocol status, each affirmation on the tablet reinforcing her command over the situation, and she allowed a pause, letting the weight of the moment settle. The room quiet except for the subtle hum of electronics and the occasional shuffle of a hesitant foot, tension winding tighter like a drawn bowstring. Edward's posture stiffened, the certainty of his earlier assertions fading as he noticed the staff exchanging uneasy glances, their confidence faltering under the unspoken pressure of Nicole's poised presence. And for the first time, the veneer of control he had relied upon seemed thin and fragile. Nicole raised her hand slightly, signaling to her assistant to continue the verification, and the display illuminated her credentials and account authority in vivid detail, undeniable and precise, each line of information a testament to her position, causing a ripple of astonishment to pass through the observers in the lounge, some exchanging whispered exclamations, others simply nodding in recognition of the clear demonstration of competence and power. A junior banker who had been hesitant earlier now straightened, caught between the protocol they had been taught and the reality of Nicole's authority, realizing that compliance was now not merely procedural but a matter of recognizing and respecting the hierarchy she embodied. Nicole's eyes swept slowly across the room, acknowledging each subtle shift, the lowered gaze of Edward, the quiet astonishment of clients, the tentative posture of staff, and she allowed the room to absorb the magnitude of the quiet but unassailable power she radiated, a presence that transformed doubt into recognition, hesitation into deference. The air seemed to thrum with an unspoken acknowledgment that the dynamics in the lounge had irrevocably shifted, the earlier tension giving way to a new order defined by her composure and decisiveness, a clarity that communicated without words the inevitability of the resolution to come. She returned to her seat, allowing the full effect of the verification to register, and in that stillness, the lounge collectively recognized that the confrontation was no longer about challenge or resistance, but about the acknowledgment of rightful authority, leaving every observer aware that Nicole Anderson had quietly but unmistakably taken command of the space, setting the stage for the final revelation and the inevitable recalibration of respect and expectation within the room. Nicole Anderson shifted her attention subtly to the surrounding clients, her calm presence drawing them closer into the silent gravity of the moment, their whispered exchanges slowing as they recognized that the authority she carried was not performative but inherent, rooted in experience and legitimacy. Edward Collins moved slightly, attempting to maintain control, yet the air had changed, and every gesture he made now seemed tentative, each word measured as if testing the space he had assumed. He owned, only to find that it had quietly slipped from his grasp. Nicole's tablet glowed with the verification confirmation, each line of data articulating the unassailable proof of her position, her ownership, and her authority over the transactions at hand. And with each client who glimpsed the information, the room shifted subtly, awareness rippling like a quiet current through the lounge, connecting every observer to the undeniable reality before them. A junior banker hesitated behind the counter, phone in hand, unsure whether to capture the moment or step aside, while a few more clients leaned in, curiosity and fascination mingling with the growing sense of respect. The energy in the room suspended between tension and recognition, as Nicole remained still, composed, letting the verification settle like a weight that could not be ignored. Edward opened his mouth. Yet no words carried weight against the quiet command that Nicole exuded, the subtle nod from her assistant confirming that every protocol had been followed, and that the chain of accountability was fully documented, leaving any attempt to undermine her position increasingly futile. Nicole's gaze swept the lounge once more, acknowledging each individual, each hesitant glance, each raised phone, her expression calm but resolute, communicating without words that the events unfolding were not merely procedural but a clear demonstration of authority and competence, and that the recognition of her status was now unavoidable. The lounge seemed to pulse with anticipation, the subtle hum of conversations and electronics fading into a collective awareness that the balance of power had shifted decisively, and that what had begun as a challenge to her presence was now a quiet affirmation of her rightful position. Each observer processing the recalibration of respect and recognition that had occurred almost imperceptibly but undeniably. Nicole allowed a brief, deliberate pause, her hands resting lightly on the tablet, the soft glow illuminating her composed face as she absorbed the energy of the room, the subtle nods of some clients, the tentative postures of staff, and the faint tightening of Edward's shoulders, all evidence that the environment had begun to mirror the quiet confidence she had projected from the moment she entered. As she exhaled softly, the stillness hung in the air, a tension that invited reflection, allowing each witness to appreciate the quiet but powerful assertion of authority that had unfolded, and the room seemed to collectively acknowledge that the next movement, the final acknowledgment, would be inevitable, carrying with it the promise of clarity, recognition, and the ultimate re-establishment of order and respect in the lounge, leaving every person present aware that the confrontation was entering its decisive stage, and that the full impact of Nicole Anderson's composure and authority was about to be revealed. Nicole Anderson's calm authority continued to radiate across the lounge, her hands resting lightly on the sleek black tablet, the screen displaying every necessary verification and confirming the legitimacy of her request. While Edward Collins and the bank staff stood in quiet tension, their earlier certainty eroded by the clarity of the information before them. The clients who had been observing with curiosity now leaned forward, some raising phones subtly, others exchanging whispered acknowledgments, each silently processing the undeniable proof that Nicole held the space with quiet, unshakable control, their attention fully captured by the way she maintained composure while every measure of authority around her became aligned with her presence. Edward attempted a half-step toward her, a gesture meant to regain some semblance of command, but Nicole's gaze, steady and unwavering, communicated a silent boundary, a clear delineation that the balance of control had shifted, and that any further attempt at interference would only emphasize the contrast between doubt and verified authority. The air in the lounge seemed to thrum with a muted electricity, the soft hum of the overhead lights and air circulation blending with the collective awareness of all present that a quiet but decisive assertion of power was unfolding, each subtle movement from Nicole orchestrating the room without raising her voice, each pause calibrated to emphasize the inevitability of recognition and acknowledgment. A junior banker behind the counter adjusted her stance, her hand hovering uncertainly over a terminal, torn between procedural loyalty and the undeniable weight of Nicole's presence, while a few clients exchanged glances, nodding almost imperceptibly, a silent chorus of validation growing as Nicole's calm authority made clear that the outcome of this moment was beyond debate. Nicole allowed herself a slow inhale, letting the room absorb the measured confidence she projected, her eyes sweeping over each individual, noting their reactions, and with a slight tilt of her head, signaling to her assistant that the next phase of verification should proceed, a subtle movement that held the room's attention entirely, every client and staff member attuned to the quiet power she exerted. Edward's expression flickered between disbelief and hesitation as the tablet updated in real time, the verification revealing not only her credentials, but her comprehensive authority over the accounts and transactions in question, the data irrefutable, each line of text reinforcing her position and shifting the dynamics within the lounge toward a recognition that could not be ignored. Nicole's posture remained straight, unassuming yet commanding, the contrast between her composed demeanor and Edward's strained gestures highlighting the transformation of control. And as the realization settled among the bank staff, their earlier attempts to assert dominance now seemed incongruous, almost futile in the face of such precise, verified authority. The client's whispering softened into attentive silence, their collective focus drawn entirely to Nicole, and in that moment, the room itself seemed to acquiesce to the quiet but absolute assertion of her role, the subtle shifts in posture and gaze throughout the lounge marking the recognition that a new order had been established, one that spoke not through volume or force, but through the meticulous demonstration of verified power, poised presence, and unshakable composure, leaving every individual present aware that the resolution of this interaction was approaching and that Nicole Anderson's command of the space was both complete and inevitable. Nicole Anderson finally lifted her eyes fully to meet Edward Collins directly, her calm demeanor unwavering as the subtle glow of her tablet cast soft light across her composed face, and the lounge seemed to collectively exhale, the clients and staff holding their attention entirely on her measured movements. Edward attempted another step forward, his voice slightly rising as he sought to assert authority. Yet each word was met with Nicole's unshakable gaze, a quiet force that conveyed a precision of control that no volume could rival. And in the hesitation that followed, the tension in the room deepened, a palpable acknowledgment that the balance had irrevocably shifted. She reached subtly for her phone, fingers brushing the screen with deliberate ease, confirming that every protocol had been engaged and that the verification systems were now fully activated. The data displayed confirming her complete authority over the accounts and transactions in question, and with this evidence, the room responded instinctively, the staff drawing back slightly, clients leaning in, every eye fixed on the unfolding demonstration of measured power. Edward's shoulders slumped imperceptibly, the certainty of his earlier demeanor fading under the clarity of Nicole's composed presence, while the junior bankers and tellers shifted, their previous confidence replaced by the cautious recognition that the events in progress exceeded ordinary procedure and entered a realm defined by undeniable verification and quiet command. Nicole's posture remained poised, her hands resting lightly on the tablet as she allowed the moment to stretch, letting the room absorb the weight of authority she embodied. Each subtle movement, each controlled pause emphasizing the depth of her command, without the need for raised voice or overt gestures. And as the clients observed, their whispered curiosity turned into attentive silence, their phones capturing the scene while their focus remained fixed on her. A senior client in the corner straightened, the soft click of a phone recording audible as they registered the unassailable clarity of the verification displayed, and across the lounge, small nods began to ripple through the audience. Subtle but unmistakable acknowledgments of the shift in power, as Nicole's composed presence transformed doubt and hesitation into recognition and respect. The air seemed to vibrate with anticipation, each observer attuned to the quiet orchestration unfolding, the balance of authority now resting with Nicole, her stillness acting as both anchor and signal, guiding the perception of the room toward a new understanding of her role and position. Edward's attempts at speech grew increasingly tentative, his gestures hesitant, while Nicole's calm and deliberate acknowledgment of the verification progress further emphasized the certainty of her control. The staff caught in the silent recalibration of their assumptions, and the clients, witnessing every measured gesture, absorbed the subtle yet profound demonstration of poise and legitimacy. Nicole allowed a slight pause, letting the ambient energy of the lounge resonate with her authority, the quiet hum of conversations and electronics blending with the sense of inevitability. And as she finally adjusted her position, leaning back slightly, yet remaining fully engaged, every individual in the lounge recognized the silent assertion of her command, the invisible line of influence she had drawn, and the unspoken understanding that the forthcoming actions would fully resolve the confrontation in her favor, leaving a room transformed by composure, precision, and the undeniable presence of Nicole Anderson. Nicole Anderson allowed a faint, deliberate pause, letting the ambient hum of the lounge settle into a quiet tension that amplified her presence. Each client and staff member now fully aware of the subtle shift in authority as she maintained her poised composure. Edward Collins glanced around, noting the attentive gazes and the soft clicking of phones as observers documented the interaction. His earlier assertiveness replaced with a cautious uncertainty, the balance of control in the room. Tilting definitively toward Nicole, without a single raised voice from her, she touched the tablet lightly, confirming once more that all verification protocols had completed successfully, the display clearly reflecting her credentials and authority over the accounts and transactions in question, and the room responded instantly, the staff exchanging tentative looks, some nodding slightly in recognition, while clients leaned in, whispers fading as attention focused entirely on her calm command. Nicole's eyes moved across the lounge, absorbing the subtle reactions, the furrowed brow of Edward, the hesitant glances of the tellers, the quiet fascination of the clients, each gesture reinforcing the quiet dominance she now held over the space, a presence that required no overt declaration but carried an unmistakable weight. A junior banker shifted, then straightened, recognizing the clarity of authority and the procedural correctness of Nicole's actions, while Edward attempted a careful step toward the counter, only to halt mid-motion as Nicole's unyielding gaze met his, signaling a boundary that needed no words, the quiet assertion of power resonating through the room. Nicole allowed her assistant a brief moment to finalize the last step in the verification, the soft clicks of confirmation audible over the otherwise silent lounge, and the effect was immediate. The staff collectively registering the unassailable nature of her authority, clients leaning back slightly, as the full scope of the situation became apparent, the energy of the room shifting from curiosity to a measured acknowledgment of her position. Edward's gestures became increasingly restrained, his voice softer as he realized the futility of resistance, while Nicole remained seated with an effortless elegance, her posture straight, her hands lightly resting on the tablet, her expression calm but imbued with an undeniable certainty, each subtle movement reinforcing the understanding that the balance of power had permanently realigned. The client's attention remained rapt, some discreetly recording the exchange while others observed quietly, each internalizing the demonstration of methodical authority, the way Nicole had allowed the tension to build before. Revealing the verification, the precision of her timing commanding respect without a single confrontational word. Nicole tilted her head slightly, a subtle gesture signaling completion, yet leaving the lounge in a state of anticipation, every individual aware that the forthcoming acknowledgment would solidify her control and redefine the perception of competence and respect within the space. The room collectively sensing that the decisive moment had arrived and that her measured, composed presence had orchestrated a quiet but powerful transformation of the dynamics in the lounge, leaving Edward, the staff, and clients alike in full recognition of the authority and poise Nicole Anderson carried without hesitation. Nicole Anderson shifted slightly in her chair, the soft light of the tablet illuminating the precise verification details that confirmed her authority, and the lounge, previously tense with uncertainty, now resonated with a quiet acknowledgment from every observer. Edward Collins' attempts at regaining control faltered as he noticed the subtle nods and sideways glances from his own staff. The initial confidence he had projected now tempered by a cautious recognition of the undeniable proof displayed before them. Clients, previously murmuring in curiosity, leaned forward, some capturing the moment on their phones, others simply observing in awe as the calm and deliberate movements of Nicole underscored her mastery of the situation, each gesture communicating unspoken command and composure that required no loud declaration. Nicole's eyes scanned the room, taking in the expressions of astonishment, hesitation, and respect, noting the subtle adjustments in posture from staff and the way clients held their attention fully on her, each detail reinforcing the shift of authority that had quietly taken hold. She allowed a measured pause, letting the verification settle fully into the awareness of everyone present, her presence acting as both anchor and signal that the balance of control had shifted definitively, and that any further challenge would be met with the quiet certainty she exuded. Edward's voice softened, his gestures restrained, while Nicole remained composed, her hands resting lightly on the tablet, a slight adjustment of her posture communicating the precision and inevitability of her authority, the room responding instinctively to the quiet power she projected. The young teller who had been hesitant now straightened, phone in hand, capturing the final movements of verification, while clients absorbed the unfolding scene, the murmurs fading into a collective, attentive silence, their focus drawn entirely to the controlled, deliberate presence that Nicole maintained. Nicole's assistant confirmed the final stage of the protocol, the soft taps on the tablet signaling completion, and with this affirmation, the staff collectively acknowledged the legitimacy of her request, their movements reflecting a newfound deference, while Edward's earlier assertiveness dissipated entirely, replaced with a careful, measured observation of her actions. The subtle hum of the lounge blended with the quiet recognition that had settled over everyone, each person processing the demonstration of calm authority and the precise orchestration of events, the room collectively sensing that the confrontation had been transformed by her methodical, composed presence. Nicole allowed her gaze to move slowly across the lounge one final time, noting the soft gestures of acknowledgment from clients and staff alike, the tentative posture of Edward, and the silent recording of the unfolding scenario, all serving as confirmation that the quiet assertion of her verified authority had reshaped the dynamics completely. The energy of the room shifted, settling into a quiet but undeniable respect, as every individual present recognized the scope of Nicole Anderson's control and composure, aware that the next moments would fully solidify the acknowledgement of her position, leaving the lounge transformed by the precision, poise, and unshakable presence she carried without a single raised voice. Nicole Anderson leaned back slightly in her chair, allowing the lounge to absorb the full weight of her composed authority, her eyes sweeping over every client and staff member with a calm precision that communicated both confidence and control, and the soft glow from her tablet highlighted the verification details that left no room for doubt regarding her credentials and authority. Edward Collins shifted uneasily, his gestures tentative, as the realization settled in that the balance of power had definitively moved. The quiet command Nicole radiated, leaving no space for continued assertion, and the staff around him exchanged subtle glances, their previous certainty replaced with cautious acknowledgment of the unassailable truth displayed before them. The clients who had been observing quietly now leaned forward, some discreetly raising their phones to record the moment, others simply absorbing the display of calm control, each whisper fading as the room collectively focused on the deliberate movements and measured pauses that marked Nicole's every action, her presence commanding attention without a single raised voice. Nicole allowed a brief pause, letting the verification settle fully into the awareness of all present, the room holding its breath as the subtle tension gave way to recognition, each person registering the clarity and precision of her authority, a shift that transformed curiosity and doubt into respect and acknowledgement. A junior banker behind the counter straightened, phone in hand, recognizing the significance of the moment, while Edward's attempts at intervention faltered, his tone softening as he registered the undeniable legitimacy of Nicole's position, the energy in the lounge shifting gradually, imperceptibly, as composure and verified authority overtook the initial tension. Nicole's hands rested lightly on the tablet, the faint glow illuminating her calm expression as she allowed the room to fully register the magnitude of her presence. Every subtle movement reinforcing the recognition that control had shifted completely, and that any further resistance would be met with quiet certainty rather than confrontation. The client's attention remained fixed, their whispered curiosity giving way to quiet acknowledgement, each recording or observation a silent confirmation of the undeniable authority Nicole carried. And across the lounge, subtle nods began to ripple, an unspoken chorus recognizing the shift in dynamics. Nicole's gaze moved deliberately from one end of the lounge to the other, noting the slight hesitations, the adjusted postures, the quiet acknowledgments of staff and clients alike, each a testament to the invisible but powerful assertion of control that she had orchestrated. Edward's posture softened further, his previous assertiveness fading as he realized the futility of challenge, while Nicole's composure remained flawless, her slight gestures and deliberate movements guiding the perception of the room, each element of her presence amplifying the understanding that the balance of authority had irreversibly changed. The soft hum of the lounge blended with the quiet collective realization that the confrontation had reached its pivotal phase, and as Nicole allowed a final, measured pause, the room collectively recognized that her verified authority had transformed doubt into acknowledgment, hesitation into respect, and curiosity into silent affirmation, leaving every individual aware that the next moments would fully solidify her command and reshape the dynamics within the lounge completely. Nicole Anderson exhaled slowly, allowing the atmosphere in the lounge to settle further into a focused stillness, her composed gaze sweeping across every client and staff member as the verification confirmation glowed softly on her tablet, the details irrefutable and precise, establishing her authority without question. Edward Collins shifted uneasily, his earlier posture of control now replaced by subtle hesitation, glancing toward his staff for support and finding only tentative acknowledgment, a quiet acknowledgment that the room had realigned itself around Nicole's undeniable presence. The clients leaned in, their curiosity replaced by a respectful attentiveness, some discreetly recording the unfolding scene, others absorbing the silent assertion of command with a sense of realization, noting the difference between bluster and methodical, verified authority. Nicole's eyes met those of a junior banker near the far counter, noting the mix of astonishment and understanding, and she allowed the briefest nod, a gesture so slight, yet so powerful that it reinforced the balance of respect now fully established, a subtle cue that the verification process had confirmed her control and set the stage for complete acknowledgement. Edward's gestures became increasingly restrained, his voice quieter, the authority he had assumed earlier dissipating as the lounge collectively registered the evidence, and the composure Nicole maintained, each deliberate movement and measured pause emphasizing the quiet but total command she now held over the room. Nicole shifted her attention across the lounge, observing the clients, the staff, and even Edward, noting the subtle adjustments in posture, the slight straightening of shoulders, the careful, measured breathing, all reflections of the recognition of her presence. A room now attuned entirely to the rhythm she set with calm authority. She tapped her tablet lightly, signaling her assistant to confirm the final steps of the verification. The soft clicks audible yet unobtrusive, and the room seemed to collectively absorb the weight of that action. The staff acknowledging the completion, clients noting the precision and care, and Edward finally allowing a slow exhale. The realization settling in that control had shifted completely, that the space now reflected her authority without question. Nicole allowed a slight smile, subtle and controlled, her composure unshaken as she observed the gentle nods, the quiet acknowledgement from staff, the attentive observation from clients, each element confirming that the dynamics of the lounge had changed, that the balance of respect and authority was now fully aligned with her presence, and that any further challenge would be rendered unnecessary by the clarity of the verification and the poise she maintained. The room, once filled with tension and uncertainty, now settled into a quiet acceptance, the ambient sounds of whispered recognition and the faint hum of electronics marking the transition. As every individual present recognized the quiet but absolute power Nicole embodied, a transformation of perception and control achieved without confrontation but through precise, measured action. Nicole leaned back slightly, her hands resting lightly on the tablet, eyes scanning the lounge one last time before allowing the full weight of the moment to resonate. Edward's expression subdued yet contemplative, staff and clients fully attentive, and the space collectively understanding that the verification had not only resolved the initial challenge but had demonstrated, in the most methodical and undeniable way, the authority, competence, and unshakable presence Nicole Anderson commanded within this room. Nicole Anderson stood fully upright now, her hands resting lightly on the edge of the counter, the ambient light from the ceiling reflecting softly off the polished marble as the lounge absorbed the full weight of her presence. Every client and staff member attentive and still. Edward Collins shifted uncomfortably, the realization settling in that his prior assumptions and attempts at authority were no longer valid. Each subtle movement he made now cautious, measured, the balance of control. Having definitively moved to Nicole, and the staff, previously hesitant, now acknowledged her role with quiet nods and attentive posture, the verification on her tablet reinforcing her legitimacy in every detail. Nicole's gaze swept slowly across the room, noting the subtle shifts in attention, the quiet acknowledgment from clients, and the tentative understanding in the staff. Each glance and small movement a reflection of the recognition her calm composure had commanded, and she allowed the room a moment to process. The collective awareness building a silent chorus of validation. She tapped her tablet lightly once more, confirming all protocols and finalizing the verification sequence. The soft click audible to those closest, yet the room held still, every observer aware of the decisive nature of her actions, the precise orchestration that transformed uncertainty into acknowledgment, hesitation into respect. The clients leaned slightly forward, some discreetly recording, others simply observing, all registering the controlled and deliberate authority that Nicole radiated, her presence, commanding attention and influencing perception without a single raised voice. And Edward, noting the shift in energy and the unmistakable clarity of her credentials, allowed a small exhale, a subtle concession to the quiet assertion of her power. Nicole's posture remained impeccable, her hands lightly resting on the tablet, her eyes scanning the lounge with measured attention, noting every subtle reaction, every quiet shift in posture, every nod and glance that reflected the acknowledgment of her authority, and the room collectively adjusted to the rhythm she established, the tension replaced with attentive respect and recognition. The junior banker behind the counter straightened fully, phone in hand, capturing the final moments of verification, while the staff and clients alike absorbed the demonstration of composure and precision. The unspoken understanding settling in that the control of the lounge had been redefined, that Nicole's presence and authority were fully recognized and accepted. A soft hum of anticipation filled the space as Nicole allowed another deliberate pause, the quiet stillness reinforcing the weight of her actions and the undeniable legitimacy of her position, each individual in the lounge processing the subtle but powerful shift in dynamics. Edward's earlier gestures of dominance had dissipated entirely, replaced with an awareness of the methodical and verified authority now present, and the client's attention remained focused on Nicole, there. Curiosity transformed into clear acknowledgment of her competence and calm command, the room collectively attuned to the unspoken rules she had set through presence, precision, and verified control. Nicole allowed herself a slight, composed smile, a subtle gesture of recognition toward the staff and clients, signaling that the verification and acknowledgment were complete, and that the balance of power, respect, and authority within the lounge was now fully aligned with her presence, leaving the room in a state of quiet comprehension, admiration, and anticipation for the final resolution of the day's confrontation. Nicole Anderson finally allowed a subtle shift in her posture, leaning back slightly, yet maintaining an unwavering poise that commanded the attention of every person in the lounge, her gaze sweeping over the staff, the clients, and Edward Collins, who now seemed to shrink into a quieter, more reflective presence as the undeniable confirmation of her authority settled fully into the room. The tablet glowed softly with the last sequence of verification completed, every detail meticulously, confirming her role and the legitimacy of her requests. And as the information registered in the minds of those present, the room collectively adjusted, the tension dissolving into a quiet, respectful acknowledgment of the shift that had occurred without a single dramatic outburst. Nicole's hands rested lightly on the edge of the counter, her fingers brushing the polished surface with deliberate grace, her her calm, measured breathing reinforcing the composed aura that had transformed the lounge into a space of recognition and legitimacy. While Edward observed, his earlier assertions replaced with a tentative understanding, the staff quietly acknowledging the thoroughness of her actions and the accuracy of the verification, subtle nods appearing across the room. The clients, previously murmuring in curiosity and speculation, now absorbed the full weight of the moment, some recording silently, others leaning slightly forward as they processed the quiet demonstration of methodical authority, recognizing the difference between mere position and verified power. The way Nicole had allowed the lounge to settle, to observe, and to internalize each detail before asserting her control fully. A junior banker adjusted her stance behind the counter, her phone poised, capturing the scene, while a few senior clients exchanged muted glances. The acknowledgment of Nicole's competence and composure spreading through their expressions, and Edward's attempts at verbal engagement dwindled. As he realized the futility of challenge, the calm certainty of Nicole rendering any objection unnecessary. Nicole's gaze moved deliberately across the room once more, noting the subtle gestures of recognition, the quiet respect forming in posture and attention, each detail a reflection of the complete transformation that had occurred from the moment she entered, every whispered doubt replaced with understanding and measured acknowledgment, the lounge now fully attuned to her presence. She allowed a small, controlled smile to touch her lips, a gesture that communicated both recognition and quiet authority, signaling to the staff and clients that the verification was complete and that the balance of respect, competence, and control had been definitively established in her favor. The air in the lounge carried a new energy, a subtle resonance of acknowledgment that had grown from tension into acceptance, a quiet but powerful demonstration of the effect of calm, precise, and verified authority, leaving every observer aware that Nicole Anderson had not only asserted her role, but redefined the expectations and recognition of authority within this space. With one final measured glance, she allowed the room to absorb the significance of the moment fully, Edward standing subdued yet contemplative, staff attentive, clients engaged, and the lounge transformed by the demonstration of composure, skill, and unassailable presence, marking the conclusion of the confrontation and the complete recognition of Nicole's undeniable authority, leaving the entire space aligned with her poise and leadership.